So we're going to be talking today about how to go from that reactive type role that I think everybody ends up sort of starting in to more strategic role. And I know from me personally, in my first role as a business partner, I was very much moving across from joining a company and just responding to the various requests they had and the firefighting here, there on existing projects, rather than doing that strategic thing. But then again, the role was quite new as well, business partnering, business relationship managing. We are talking 8-9 years ago now, so it's quite a time ago, and I don't think the concept here at least was really thought through so much. I think now with the Institute and everything, we've got a bit more of a structure to go on and turning this into more of a profession than what it was before. So I think that's great.
So my name is Matt Butcher from the University of Birmingham, and I say joined by our panel guest this morning, where we'll be discussing how to move from reactive to strategic partnerships within your organisation. I don't know if our panel would like to introduce themselves.
Okay, well, I think I've given a bit of my introduction.
Well, obviously you don't introduce yourself, but the rest of the panel can just give a little bit of an introduction to themselves.
Okay, I think I'm up next. So I'm Taro, Lamplow, Head of IT Business Partnering at the University of Birmingham. I have been officially a BRM for about 2.5 years now, and the business partnering function was a new function at the university at that time. Previous to that, I've had various roles where I've ended up doing the kind of business partnering thing, but just not under the title essentially, and kind of built up that experience over a number of different roles, where I was generally the person that was the outreach type of person in a team. All the roles kind of generally at the University of Birmingham.
So my name is Mark Watson. I am currently the lead business relationship manager at the British Heart Foundation. I have got, I guess it's about 7.5 years of experience of being a business relationship manager. But both roles, funny enough, it was very much introducing the role of a BRM first at the university environment, and then at the British Heart Foundation. So sort of experience of sort of building the role and obviously having that support from the top to go from there. Prior to I think this is sort of one of the messages that came across yesterday, was, I didn't come from a techie background. I came from more of a sales, account management, employability, careers type sort of background, really, working in various different industries. But it was a lot of that's about that listening skills, those, understanding what's happening within the business, and relating that to sort of the technology. So I think that was my background. And as I said, you don't always have to come from a technology background to be able to do this role.
Okay, thanks, Mark. It's Meghna. I'm currently a business relationship manager at British Heart Foundation. I've joined there in the lockdown. So I had an experience of running as a BRM in the lockdown totally virtual environment, which I can share later on. But I've been doing business partnering for 7 to 8 years formally in the role. But when I first started doing it, the role was just forming in the organization. So it was a good opportunity to shape it and to move it forward. I come from more traditional software engineering business analysis route into business relationship management. So very different to Mark's routes. It's different routes you could take to get into business relationship management, and which I'm sure I'll get the opportunity to share more about from my experience later on. Thanks, Matt.
That's great. Thanks, everyone. I guess we'll dive straight in with the big question: how do you position yourself as a strategic BRM? And Dennis, would you like to kick off that one?
Yeah, well, kind of continuing on from my opening remarks about joining an organisation, building the role up. One of the things I needed to do was actually listen to see what was going on. Listen to see, that's a good analogy there. Listen to see what was going on, so that get a feel for the business, see what the issues are, and also to position yourself as that business partner role. I try to look at projects and the business holistically. Like, I'm not just there to look at providing an IT solution. I'm there to provide a business solution, something that is going to provide a benefit to the business. And when looking at the types of projects that we're going to be doing, or bringing new technology in, there's a couple of key criteria that we look at, and that's, is there a regulatory or statutory need for bringing this in? Is there a revenue generating need for this? Does it help with brand, building the company's brand up in many ways? So it's thinking outside the IT box and all those sort of aspects. Somebody mentioned yesterday about business partners being the glue of the business, and that's what I really do feel like I am at times, because I'm bringing in the procurement team, the finance team, different parts of the technology team to bring these projects together without actually being a project manager, because I don't think that's actually our role. We're not meant to be managing projects. I know in some organisations, because of the size, it's quite hard if you're to try and push away from being a project manager to being a business analyst. And I think they're the tougher ones. That's quite hard to move from that reactive to strategic role, because the resources aren't there, and you've got to find the right way of sort of saying, hey, can we bring somebody on? I know yesterday in the chat somebody was saying that they've just signed off a business analyst in the role, and they were quite ecstatic about it. So I think that's the way it should be going. If you had a proper structure, or proper what I call an ideal structure, the business analyst, the project manager, and the business partner as a team working together to get things done. Having that kind of structure in place allows the business partner to move away from reactive and move on to the strategic tasks. Building that strategic knowledge is quite important, because you've got to really understand how the business works, and that's something that happens over time. Unless you've got some, you may have prior industry knowledge, but getting under the skin of the business, finding how they tick, don't sort of live in your own silo, because that's what we're trying to break down here. We're trying to break down those silos and move into that more strategic place. People come to you for advice, and not just how to fix the photocopy or your printer.
Okay, that's great. Tara, would you like to answer them?
Yeah, I think ideally you want to open and launch your service as strategic from the start. So with support and messaging from your CIO, your IT director, that this is your strategic partner, this is who you need to reach out to, and pass that message around at the strategic level in your organisation. So I was really lucky. My IT director did that. He introduced the service, why he wanted the team to be in place, what he hoped that would give to the university, and how that would set the expectation within the IT function, as well as to kind of how this was going to move the department forwards. My job was then to make sure that I understood the strategic priorities of the people that I was working with, and could show how the technology would support them strategically, providing value that they can't get from within their business unit, kind of having that insight of which teams working IT, what capabilities we have, having all of that information and kind of matching that up to kind of the strategic intent. I think what I've found is that I've needed to kind of have a regular review of kind of where the strategic decisions are being made, and am I in those kind of arenas. Definitely when the pandemic hit, kind of our strategic decision making kind of went, our senior decision making kind of went all over in kind of different places, and it shifted some of that decision process. And therefore I had to kind of have a bit of a review of kind of, okay, so where are these decisions coming from? How do I get into those kind of arenas? Who do I need to influence? And kind of occasionally kind of taking that step back and making sure that you're kind of still operating in that strategic space, and you're not kind of finding that you're not in the right conversations. And yeah, so generally kind of try and get it, kind of pitch your level, set that expectation from the outset, and then follow that up with the knowledge and the insight and the questions that you can keep maintaining that level.
Yeah, it sounds similar to Tara, really. Both roles I've been in, it's been really clear that we've had to get that senior buy-in right at the early stages. So, when we was introducing the role, I was lucky in the point that I was right at the beginning. So I managed to go around with the CTO, to go around and speak to the different directors, introduce the role, do the presentation, what the differences, where I sit in terms of the operations team and the different people within the operations. So I think that was really key. At the British Heart Foundation, we've gone through various different structures, but at the moment we've got 6 main sort of directorates. really. Sort of the marketing, fundraising, engagement is in one area. Sort of the pod, which is the people, organisation, development, includes HR, finance, risk, legal, technology. You've also got the medical aspect, research side of things, and retail, sort of key areas really. I look after them. I guess my biggest area that I look after is the marketing, fundraising one, which is quite, full on, all about trying to raise money and how we can promote the brand and promote all the research that we're doing. Because it's amazing that even now, after sort of 60 odd years, people still don't know that we fund we used to fund £100 million worth of research every year. Due to the pandemic, it's gone down to 50 million this year, but still significant amount of money. But it's amazing people didn't realise that. But from a strategic perspective within the BHF, I guess the key thing that I've learned is you need to be around the table. You need to be, for me, I need to be as part of and seen as part of the directorate senior leadership team. So I attend those meetings. I'm in those meetings, having those sort of coffee cooler, water cooler sort of meetings, really. And really sort of just picking up some of those subtle clues sometimes about some of the main little issues that are having, where they'd like to see themselves in the future. And it's just sometimes it's building those sort of natural relationships that will then help to have those bigger conversations where we then start talking about, well, okay, you want to do this and you want to do that, but what's the real value in that? And I guess it's focusing the key points around the value and getting the most value out of everything that we do. So I guess that's where I truly try and drive, and that helps, I guess, position the BRM as more strategic, is because we're focusing on the value, not on what is being delivered on products and things like that along those sort of lines. And it's really trying to, I guess, what I noticed when I was in the BHF when I first started was a lot of people talked about, let's deliver this project, let's deliver that project. It has all these fantastic features, advantages over what we've already got. But no one was really talking about what's the key benefits to that individual or to that individual's team or the director's team or to the BHF as a whole. It was very much focused on what the actual system could do. And I guess that's where I try to come in and really focus on understanding, so if tech are introducing new technology or in the pipeline, is understanding the business perspective and then really say, this is how it's going to benefit yourselves and your team. Is it going to help you raise more money, make you do your job that much simpler and more efficiently? Or is it going to help promote the brand and basically the research that we do? So those are the key things really that I try and work on to make it more strategic.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Mark. And Meghna, how about you? How do you position yourself as a strategic BRM?
A lot of it is what Tara, Dennis, and Mark have already covered. But I think one thing I would add is I've had experience of at BHF where I'm working into a team where the business relationship management is actually set up strategically and has that buy-in from the leadership. So it's quite refreshing to be in that environment. I'm joined as a new BRM. But previously, when I started my journey into a BRM role, it started as a business applications manager to move, and then the role evolved into business relationship management. And that's where I had the experience of nudging the businesses into different directions. So giving them a view of what needs to be done by operations and where the BRM can get involved, because they see someone from technology who's their go-to, and before you know, you become a person who would just solve all their tactical problems. So in order to step away from it, one of the key things for me has been to ensure that different business areas understand the importance of a BRM role, where we could add value and how it's value-driven and outcome-driven rather than just output-driven. And other key aspect of making sure it's strategic is, as Mark alluded to, having the seat at the table, having that voice at a leadership level within different business areas, having contacts all across organizations, whether it's through fellow BRMs or whether it's through different technology teams and different business teams, having informal or formal conversations. Listening is a very key skill, and utilizing that skill to help businesses deliver strategic decisions is quite important to keep the role strategic. But a lot of the times, responsibility is twofold. It's one at the technology director level to ensure that it is understood all across at leadership how BRM role is shaped, what they would and wouldn't do, and provide the support structure to BRM. But second is on the BRM himself or herself, because if we don't set boundaries and keep getting dragged into operational resolutions, then we would be seen as doing that. So it's quite important to have that shift and have regular checkpoints to ensure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do as a BRM, helping different business areas and customers thinking more strategically, both within technology and the wider business as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Meghna. I mean, you just touched on one of the points that we're going to discuss next. You find yourself in a positioning yourself as a strategic BRM, but you still find yourself being pulled into tactical or operational activities. What do you do in that situation? How do you continue to make your role strategic rather than operational?
Sure. I think I would elaborate on what I touched upon in my response to the first question. Many times businesses don't have the appreciation of how vast the technology teams are and what is the structure, who should they go to for what. So it's quite important to share the technology organization chart with the businesses and making sure they understand the different touch points. For example, if there's an incident, there's an issue with an existing application, then they need to follow the operations process and who leads that process. If they have escalations, what is the process for escalation on that route? Yes, as a BRM, I could never say that it would be a purist role that if business has urgent critical need and they have followed all the path and it's still not getting resolved, they can still come to a BRM to help navigate it, but doesn't mean that I become the person to provide them to the point update every hour. I'll make sure that it's the right operations lead who is brought into the process and who is taking that ownership as well. I think some of the other things is signposting properly to the right process, to the right team, so that both sides can take ownership appropriately. And depending on the criticality and the impact of the issue, updating the technology team to help them lead the issues and make them aware of what's coming, what's the business impact of it, giving them the background, but yet leaving them with the ownership to take it forward and be closer to it, to business from that point of view. But saying no, I think sometimes is really important. I think as a BRM, as much as it's about being the voice of business into technology and voice of technology into business, similar amount of it is about being assertive and saying no within reason, giving them the right direction as well. And one last but not the least is reevaluate the expectation of BRM role and its maturity within the organization. Say if the balance is tipping and it starts becoming more operational, as a BRM, I would reevaluate how it's going, how it's, is it moving in the right direction, or if it's not, then take the steps with the leadership team to ensure that it is.
Now, do you think it's in our nature because we're the types of people that we've worked with issues before, and we don't like. Oh, I know I certainly don't like to have issues hanging over me that someone's come with. I want to pass them across to somebody to make sure that they're done. But there's always that overarching concern that has that person I've given it to, have they completed it? Can I trust them? There is a trust element, I think, in a bit of this, isn't there, where we've got to let go to a point as well when we pass those tasks on to people. But they've got to be people we can trust to be responsible enough to complete it, because someone will come back to us. That person that raised the issue will come back to us first as the BRMs, VPs, and say, where's this issue? Even though that you've told them, X or Y is dealing with it. Do you find the same sort of issues, the same sort of challenges? Anyone?
Yes, I do. I think I'll let Mark and Taro take more time on this. When it does happen, and yes, as a BRM, it's also that inner need to, I want to communicate my stakeholder. I want to keep my stakeholder updated to the right level. I'm not sure if I can trust something. But I think part of it is building that relationship within technology team as well. And many times I would just pick up the phone and talk to the operations lead and go, have you provided update? Do you have any update that I can provide? And of course, it depends on the seniority of the business stakeholder. So if it's a retail director, for example, I would want to keep the retail director more updated regularly, but also including the operations leads or head of operation into that communication, bringing them in so that I'm just providing one update a day or one update in a couple of days, but they are providing more detailed update at the head office level within the retail department as well. So I think it's a difficult balance to strike, I would say, and it's a judgment call based on the circumstances.
It's almost
sorry, I was going to give chance for Tara and Mark and yourself to elaborate on this point. So, Tara, would you like to? How do you find yourself not getting pulled into operational activities?
Yeah, I think as we've already kind of alluded to, ideally you want a safe pair of hands that you can hand over to from an operational tactical kind of perspective. So ideally kind of a signposting service is how I like to work, in terms of something comes in, it's not me, but I need to be able to signpost to the right team and the right individual to kind of pick that up. Obviously I know my team in terms of IT team really well, and I will know handing over to this person, that's a definite safe pair of hands, feel very confident, and that's an easy one. And then others less confident, you have to keep a bit of a watching brief on it. Make sure that they're very aware that kind of senior stakeholders are eyes on this one. Make sure that they're kind of aware that they're flagging with me if there's any issues or concerns with kind of progressing things. And yeah, kind of certain areas and certain individuals you do feel like you're going to have to handhold a little bit more. Try and keep that behind the scenes, really, because ideally you want to make that known as it's not my role. Occasionally you'll find that you get things come in and you're really not even sure which team might pick it up, and then there's some internal kind of IT mediation to try and work out where is this going to go, who's going to pick this up, because you do really want to be handing over those kind of things to someone else so that you can stay in that kind of strategic space and not get dragged into other things. I do try and avoid logging calls for people, no matter how senior they are in the institution. We have a service desk process, and I don't really want to be raising tickets on behalf of other people. So what I would usually do if something is kind of raised to me in one of the one-to-ones I have is to flag, like, that raise a ticket, let me know the incident number and I will keep an eye on it for you. And that kind of suggests that I'm providing some extra level of service, but really normally if it's going through the usual ticketing process, it will be fine and it will be dealt with in the appropriate way. It's usually things have kind of hung around not being dealt with because they've not been going through the right process. So yeah, different levels of intervention, I think, depending on kind of your confidence levels within the IT function. And I think that's natural that yes, some areas you might have a little bit more nervousness of and kind of have to have a little bit more hands-on. But if this is a reoccurring thing that certain areas are not performing, then obviously you do need to raise with that line management chain that there are issues in that area and try and get that resolved more strategically as well internally, and not kind of occasional blips where people are off sick and stuff you can kind of cover. But if there's regular areas that are kind of not you're not got confidence in, do you need to try and do something about that as well.
It's a bit of needs-based sort of intervention, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, taking an assessment of it and working out what's the impact if you don't take a little bit of control in it, hopefully pushing back when necessary.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Tara. It's really insightful. Mark, how about you? How do you stop yourself from getting tied into operational activities?
Well, I think we all probably can agree that sometimes you have to you have to do it, and there's various reasons why you do end up getting involved in the operational aspect. I guess for me, I always try to be really clear about the messaging about who does what and what sort of the roles and responsibilities when we first have those meetings, introducing to anyone new into the business. I try again position what I can do, what I will do, what I won't do. and who the best person will be. You know, I similar to Taro though, you know, I always say that if you don't know who to speak to, if you don't know where to go, or if you need to escalate something because things are not happening, please let me know. And I have done it in the past as well, similar to Taro, where you log a ticket, just copy me into it so that I'm aware of it, based on the expectation that it will be solved anyway, so I won't have to do anything. Sometimes I think, not that I'm scary or anything like that by any means, but just sometimes by having someone else within sort of technology aware that there's an escalation, I think sometimes that does sort of push things through a little bit quicker at the same time. But I guess when you're doing these sort of operational or tactical type activities, for me, it's very much to understanding where it fits in the general purpose of what the role is and what I'm trying to achieve. So if there's someone new into the business and someone into the organization that I'm trying to build a relationship up with, I probably will get more involved in some of the operational issues because I need to get them up to speed and build a bit of trust with that relationship to make sure that we can then start having those conversations about what they want to do in the longer term. If they come into the business and their first impression is that technology is the whole of technology, that's myself, that's service desk, that's everyone. If the first impression that it isn't very good, that's going to make my job 10 times harder. So I do tend to try and put a little bit of a wrap around to start off with. Again, still positioning where I sit and what my role and responsibility is. But I do tend to be a little bit more hands-on at those stages just to make sure that I give a little call or email or Teams message to someone in the team saying, oh, where are we up to? Can we push this one through? Those type of things, just to try and help me build that relationship. Sometimes even maybe a repair relationship if I've had to say no, or we can't do something, or there's no budget, or on those sort of lines. It just shows willingness at the same time. But I guess for me, it's always about looking at that wider picture. So understanding where it fits in, what can we do, build those relationships so we can actually try and move forward. So I guess that's really the really sort of how I sort of go about it. The handover part, that is a tough one, and I have had issues with trying to hand things over. Similar to Taro again, where there's certain colleagues that you go, yeah, brilliant, there you go, that's it. I'm 100% certain they're going to deal with it. And then there's other ones where you go, okay, there you go, and that you've got to put something in your diary saying, 2 weeks later, let's just touch base to see where that's up to, because that sometimes is the issue. But I guess the biggest thing is to be a little bit comfortable that there is going to be failure sometimes, and there are going to be issues, and be comfortable with that, because when there are those issues and the processes don't work, that also gives you an opportunity to have a look at, is there a problem with the process? Is there a problem with not having enough staff, or the training of the staff needs to be improved? So it does give you an opportunity to understand where it needs to work and what needs to be improved. And maybe again, sort of, I guess if there is an issue, you can come flying in and solve the issue with one sort of phone call, and again, that helps build the relationship and a bit of trust as well. But again, it's balancing that, because you don't want to be seen the only person that you can do something.
Basically, everything everyone says, what I'd say too. It's the joy of coming out last in this segment, isn't it? But no, I totally agree. I think there's some questions popping up there in the chat, which are quite interesting, which kind of relates to this, about, is it our role to be strategic, or is it to serve the business, and in any way, shape or form? And I think it is a bit of a balance between the two. Yes, we are the contact person for the business, for IT, and your organisation could be very different to my organisation, to the way it's done. There's very many different levels of maturity out there from what we've seen talking to people here, and how it should be done and how it is done. Reality to theories, it can be two different things. But I think that ultimately, if we can push back on, for want of a better word, the plumbing, the infrastructure needs, there should be somebody in your organisation that does that. You shouldn't be there, sorting out the printer and the photocopier. And someone put in the chat about, yeah, you know, you wouldn't go and ask the finance director to sort out your spreadsheet, would you? And I think that's a really good analogy there. I've had some really strange questions asked my way where I am at the moment. You know, I'm part of the leadership team, and we've got a distribution centre sending out our products from the Netherlands, and there were issues there, and they heard it was IT issues. You know, so suddenly I'm responsible for a distribution centre not in my remit, but the questions are coming my way. You know, I had to go and find out that because to try and find out from my side if there's any issues. No, it was just a big staff turnover at the time that was causing an issue, but still, that communication hadn't gone out. It goes back to us being the glue to hold things together. We're finding out things that we shouldn't. It goes back to listening, finding out what's the best way to push things across. I often think that our job is actually a bit like an air traffic controller. You know, things come up passing our way. We either throw things move things from one destination to the other. Some things we just keep spinning up in the air for as long as we can until we can deal with them, and then move on to somewhere else.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think it's really important. Our roles are a lot about building those relationships, understanding the motivation, the influence, and the interests and the needs within the business and the technology. And that's how it all starts, right? When we join an organization, then we start building those relationships. And once we have that in place, it's quite natural to flow from one to the other, to understand who to bring in, when, and how to manage each individual's or business area's needs. And a lot of it is about that soft skills and the need to go out and engage with people outside of just being called out to deal with issues or incidents. And a lot of it happens outside of the remit, isn't it?
Just one additional point that kind of we launched our service consistently across multiple areas of the university. We launched it as strategic, but we still have different levels of maturity, I guess, in terms of that relationship at different with different business units. So if your business unit hasn't got a strategic plan and is very tactical, it's hard for you to be in that space. So it's different areas, and the level of maturity will vary depending on who you're working with, and you do have to adapt really to your partner area and who you're working with, and make sure that you're adding value and trying to kind of push to that more strategic space. But different areas across our kind of remit are at different levels, I think.
Thank you. I mean, we do have one final question. Obviously, the role is different across different organisations, but how do you see the role of BRM evolving? Mark?
Yeah, I think this is probably quite a tough one to answer, really, because is it just listening to colleagues and from yesterday as well, and some of the messages? I think every organisation is different, and things will depend a lot on the organisation size, maturity of it, the amount of people, resources that are available, as to where things go, because there's lots of hybrid roles, there's lots of people doing multiple hats and different things along the different side. I guess from my perspective, from a BHF side, I would say, if anything, we seem to be moving more away from traditional projects, sort of the waterfall Prince 2 sort of methodology. We're still doing those, but then they tend to be for the big programs, bigger projects. But there is definitely a driver within the business around more of a product mindset. So everyone wants to move quicker and wants to try new things. They want to really try get these new things out into the marketplace, learn from them, fail fast, learn fast, and then try again and use those learnings either to make a better product or to make a completely different one and try and test that. Whether that's because it's more of the fundraising, the marketing aspect that I tend to deal with a lot of the time, I don't know, but there is definitely a demand for that. Even from the directors I'm speaking to, they are very keen and trying to move faster in a more agile, sort of fluid role. So I can see that there's been a lot more of a movement over to how we can work with some of the more digital teams to become more product focused.
Okay, thank you very much. And Dennis, how would you answer? How do you see the role of them?
I think that's again, we could sit here for hours talking about it. I mean, many people think that BRMing BP is a stepping stone up to becoming a CIO. and there are some qualities in that role that, yes, are shared. But then going back to the CEO is also responsible for the in some organisations the technical aspect, and that's an area that I don't really get much joy out of. So I don't want to stick to what I'm doing. I think the role's going to be evolving quite a lot over the next years as the profession changes and become more structured. And I think there'll be a lot more, after listening to the BRMI talk to us yesterday about new things coming in and the session coming up next, the value proposition. I think that's going to be very interesting, how we get seen to be more as adding the value on that side, rather than just what we're doing now. I think we're evolving, and I think we're going to continue to evolve as a profession.
Wonderful. Okay, Meghna, yourself?
Yeah, I think in more generic context, it's going to be more organization specific, because different organization defines and evolves BRM roles very differently. But for me personally, I've recently joined BHF. I've only been there a couple of months, and in my role as BRM, I see a lot of opportunity to help shift the business mindset to think more strategically, almost get them into habit of looking for their North Star and following the journey. And it is at an interesting point, really open and hungry for change, as Mark's already shared about move towards product focus organization from a traditional project focus organization. So it is going to be exciting time to take them on that journey with me. And I think that's how I see my role evolving with BHF in short to medium term as well. And externally, keeping an eye on what BRM Institute brings out forward as well, because that would shape the BRM roles in future for some other organizations as well.
Thank you, Meghna. And lastly, Tara, how do you see the role evolving at the University of Birmingham?
Yeah, I've been getting a lot more involved in the digital strategy for the university, making sure that it is a joined up strategy between kind of the business area and IT, shaping roadmaps for the next few years of where we need to be as a university. So there's a lot of work in that space, and kind of looking more at kind of platforms that support the kind of cross-functional business units rather than individual kind of business units and kind of individual roadmaps for different areas. There's a lot of work that we're doing internally in terms of culture change within the IT function and trying to move that forward and make that more agile, more customer focused, and an effort in that space obviously then kind of cascades out to kind of all of our partner areas. And finally, similar to BHF, we're also doing work in the product team space. So I've been supporting kind of some new product teams be set up and making sure that kind of the relationship and those aspects of it and the kind of our business areas understand kind of why we're setting up product teams, what that means for them, what that means for their involvement, and yeah, kind of shaping kind of how that will work moving forwards as well. So yeah, lots going on, lots of interesting things.
Thanks, guys. That's been really, really insightful this morning. Now, I think we just have a little under 10 minutes for some Q&A now.
So we've got a cracking question here from Pez. And the question is the mark of a successful BRM to be strategic, or is it doing what's required for your business, even if that leaves you in a low maturity state?
I think it's a challenging one, quite challenging. I really think you need to decide for yourself whether you want to be in that sort of space. I know it sounds bad. Sometimes I think, can you help this organisation? Can you help them strategic? What value can you add? And if you find that the maturity level doesn't match your maturity level, maybe it's not a good fit on both sides. Sometimes we've got to think a bit harshly like that. Tara?
Yeah, I think you've got to be adding value, and there's no point going in trying to have a conversation around strategic stuff if they've got a pressing thing that's on the top of their mind that they just need sorting. So it may be that you have to do some of that operational kind of tactical stuff and make sure that is being resolved before you can have those strategic conversations. You need to be kind of adding value in each of your interactions with your senior stakeholders. Yeah, it may not be where you want to be, but you kind of sometimes have to get through that to get to the strategic space.
So my organisation is at the very early stages of BRM maturity. What would you suggest to a newly appointed BRM to establish the credibility of the BRM function and role within the organisation?
I think the key bit, let me start on this, and others can then add on. Understand the BRM role yourself, what BRM is, what BRM isn't, buying in the leadership. And I'm assuming that if they are starting on that journey, they've already got a leadership buy-in as well. But communicating it across the business is quite important to set that role. So a lot of the time initially would go into setting the structure to the BRM function and constant communication to the wider business areas and even to technology teams, because many times they also think, oh, we've got a point of contact to business, so anything that comes, can BRM deal with this? And you have to be quite clear on what BRM can and can't do. But again, if you are fortunate to be in a space where organization and IT director is more alluded to a BRM being a strategic role. If the organization's immediate needs are for BRM to resolve the current issues that business is facing, then you would have to focus on that first, while in parallel you are evolving and setting up the BRM function to be more strategic.
I'm just going to add to that. As you're on that journey, I think communication is really important. Getting out your successes. Is there a way in your organisation to let them know that, hey, we've achieved this, we've achieved that. One company I worked for was really good on internal media comms. We had our own marketing person for IT. We were at that level, and so we were always saying, we've completed this project, we've completed that project, so people knew, what we're actually doing. They could see something quite tangible, and I think that's probably at the higher level. On a small scale, if you've got the ability within your, if you've got the capacity to take on that sort of media role and be the mouthpiece for the BRM role in your company, and say, hey, we're achieving this. Let's partner with you and see what else we can do. I think that's a good way of growing that role out.
Yeah, and Jack, if I just to add on to that, I guess when you're starting out in building the BRM role, I guess you need to, what I always found, and I found this, didn't do it so well in my first role, but in the second one, was really much building the relationships both within technology, IT, and the business. I think BRM gets very sort of driven, and when you come into a role, you're very much concentrating on the business areas, understanding, listening to what they want to do, what some of their issues are. But sometimes you actually need to listen to what's happening internally within technology as well, because, as we said, the tactical and operational aspect issues are the first thing that the business sort of mention. So if we can help internally solve some of those issues there and act as a BRM to technology, we can ultimately help solve the issues of the business. And then we can straight away say, look, we come in, we change this, and then how can we help you with your issues now?
I think one thing I would add there, Jack, is it also depends on if BRM function is being started by people internally being moved to be BRM, and they may be doing different roles previously, then it's much harder to shift people's mindset to see this person as the BRM and totally cut away from what that person was previously doing. And in many ways, if the organization strategy is to bring some people from outside, then business would be more open to listening to those people and opening up to what that role is like. And it's a balance between promoting that development internally and bringing in some external expertise to make it a stronger team.
Thank you very much. We're nearly out of time now, so I'm going to hand over to Estelle